This is one heck of a crowd. I hope we live up to your expectations. You know, I was here with Steve about a couple of months ago with Joyce Morrison, Steve's aunt, and we took a walk around this place. And one of the things that I picked up was the Babbling Brook newsletter. That is a great name for this. And I've been looking through it, and this has got to be one of the most active retirement communities around. It's just amazing what you all are doing. It's sort of like being on a big cruise ship, and you have something to do every day, every hour. One thing I did notice, you do have a worship service on Sundays at 2 o'clock, and there are some familiar names there. I see, I don't know if he's your resident minister, Ed Gayhart.
Yes.
Just down the street, of course, is Trinity Church, and that's where he was a minister for many years. I'm also a Presbyterian, so I have worked with Ed on several committees with Presbytery. And then another minister, Willa Faye Williams. She's a minister at Portland Presbyterian Church. You know, that was a church that had a terrible fire many years ago. And what they did is, rather than rebuild the church, they moved into a storefront commercial strip, and they have their church there. And then another one who's very familiar is Bill Williamson. He is a retired minister. He was with Harvey Brown as an interim minister for a while, and then they have a new pastor. And now he's at our church at Bardstown Road Presbyterian Church, and we've made him an associate pastor. So he's not able to retire yet. So what we're going to do is we're going to take you on a little journey, and I'm going to make sure I hit the right button. Steve told me if I hit the wrong button, the whole show is over with. So we sure don't want to do that. All right.
Oh, wait, let's
Whoops,
go.
I skipped it. I'm going to go back here. Okay, this is me wearing shades.
I'm going to turn this.
Okay, yeah, that would be good. One of the things that I'm going to give a plug for at the very end, I'm a member of Veritas Society, and that's an organization that's based on Bellarmine's campus, and it provides continuing education for senior citizens. You don't have to be that senior. I think if you're 55 and over, you can participate, and it's really a great experience. I think you would all enjoy it. I'm also a member of the Kentuckiana Blues Society, and there's a book that's coming out in about 2 months called The Soulful Sounds of Derbytown, which is Louisville, and I wrote several portions of that book. So I'm really excited about that. Now, Steve, you want me to?
Just go ahead.
Okay, I will put Steve up, and he can tell.
And again, I'm a lifelong Louisvillian with the St. X. Any St. X grads here? I don't see any. Trinity grads? No Trinity. I'm a member of the AIA, the Architects Association. I am a fellow with the architects. Very much involved in the Louisville Historical League and local history things. And I am retired, so that's a good thing as well. Okay,
I got to give Steve a good. He put together this presentation of 49 slides. Not only is Steve a great IT tech, but he's also a great writer and speaker of history of buildings in Louisville, and I think he's coming back again to give another.
yeah, I think I may be back later.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Okay, let's get started.
And Keith's going to blame me if anything goes wrong. That's okay.
All right.
Oh, go back one.
Am I skipping
You
here?
skipped one there.
Okay. You know, one of the things that was prepared when this whole project was getting started was promotional literature. And there's a couple of editions of these called Brookside News to get people interested and to commit and sign up. And, you know, the plan was on these 26 acres of beautiful land to have 10 cottages, or as you call them now, villas. And let's see, 100 cottages and 149 apartments. And that's right, that's actually 37 acres of land. And I can remember coming out here a long time ago before anything started, and just sitting on the hill where this is, the highest ground, and just imagining what this is going to be like someday. And here we are 40 years later, and it's a wonderful community. But these are offering all these wonderful things which you are already familiar with, all the special care that you have. So these were some of the things, promotions that were done to encourage people to buy. And there was a company called ARC, which is the official name is American Retirement Corp. And they were the first people who started to market this place. And actually they had their offices just about across the street on Mosier Lane. And so little by little people signed up, and when they had enough they began to start construction. And one thing that made it possible is they were able to sell what was called industrial revenue bonds. And they sold $26 million worth. And Steve did a little calculation, that's over 3 times what it would be worth today. But by doing these bonds, they were really able to build this all at once, rather than a piece here and a piece there. So this whole community came together very quickly. This is a map. You can see it's a little bit worn. It shows the whole layout. And this is Shelbyville Road. This is the main drive. I had to tell the person, the guard at the entrance, what I was doing here. But you can see the great layout. There were some things that didn't happen, and it's probably for the good. I'm going to use this pointer too. Yeah. Okay, this was intended to be another wing of the apartments. You only have 4 buildings, but in a way, that's really nice that it is an open space. And we did plan to have another wing, and you do have another wing back there now. But you can see how all the buildings are arranged. There are duplexes, fourplexes, and a few triplexes. And when I was driving around earlier this morning, it was fun to see what you have done to some of your garages, or I should say carports. Many of them have become garages, and even some, I think, had to turn it into a little room. So that's very creative to see how this whole project developed. And even the apartments, on the balconies, some of you have screened them in, and some of you have put glass and windows there, so you've adapted your apartments to suit your needs. And I think this property was, someone said it might have been a chicken farm a long time ago, but you know, this was all carved out of, the Baptists have this, what's called Spring Meadows, and Lewis and Henry did these cottages many years ago. And this building is referred to as the Kentucky Baptist Convention, but when I went by it this morning, it sure didn't look like that, so it must have taken on a new purpose. So, and I want to say, if you have any questions or something, or even a comment, feel free to do it. We'll have a chance at the end, but if you have something to say, I would love to hear what you have to say. So let's move on. This is a shot of looking at it shortly after it was built. Now you're going to notice one big change there. What has changed since this was taken?
We've got the ambassador suites.
Okay, that's true. That's a good point. Up here, whoops, I got to make sure. Okay. Up there, you do have another wing. But the biggest thing that I saw was the landscaping. Today you drive around, you have mature trees, foliage everywhere, and this looks pretty bare. And believe me, if there were trees there, we would have tried to save them, but there really wasn't that much. So I thought this was an interesting shot to show you what it looked like, I guess probably close to 40 years ago. I think a big challenge was, you know, there's a lot of topography change, and so we had to step these cottages up and down to suit the terrain. And you can see the courtyard that was created when we did these links, and we'll take a better look at those later.
Little trees up there in the middle of the courtyard.
Okay, the groundbreaking for this was done, you can see, in June 15th, 1983. So you can see this is a little over 40 years ago. And we had a board of directors. One of them was an architect, our principal in our office, Fred Lewis. He's on the list there. And the contractor was Hall Contracting. And they're still in business today. They have their offices over on Crittenden Drive. But this was to announce a special occasion for groundbreaking. And this is served a lunch. And that was part of it was if you can see somebody that was here that has become a little bit more famous since then.
Wow.
Second from the bottom, Mitch McConnell, then he was Jefferson County Judge Executive.
Mitch has been in the news lately.
Yes, he has. And then another fellow that was involved with this throughout was Victor Prevey, or Vic Prevey. He was the head of Action Now, and he was also, I think, is also a Presbyterian minister. He and his wife used to raise llamas out in Shelbyville. And then Larry Lease was here speaking. Larry Lease was president of Lewis and Henry at the time, and I always enjoyed working with Larry. He was a great guy to work with. And so everybody had 2 cents to say about the groundbreaking. And then this is another issue of this Brookside News, telling more about the management team, and it does mention about how they were making sales. And this is a, you might say, a model that was made of the grounds in great detail. You can see people pointing at where the cottages are. Whoops, let me go back again. You can see they're pointing where the cottages are and the apartments, and the commons is right about where her hand is. The only thing is, it's not what you think it is. It's actually a large chocolate cake. It was made, and I tell you, the detail is incredible.
Wow.
And so eventually we did have to cut up this property.
So we're going to need to get one of those, Sarah, right? We're going to get one of those.
Yeah, if we have any cooks in the audience, this would be a challenge. That would be a sheet
Oh,
cake.
that's funny.
Yeah. Okay. Lewis and Henry used to put out a little newsletter too, and it told in our newsletter about who we were and some of the project. Lewis and Henry has gone through several evolutions, but I always loved this logo, which I used to call the Flying L&H. And, but unfortunately, Lewis and Henry is no longer with us because sometimes firms come and go. These are the 2 principles that started. We're going to divert a little bit and talk about Lewis and Henry. The 2 main principles are Fred Lewis. You can see him up there if you can't from the back. Let's go back. I got to get used to using this. That's Fred Lewis, and this is Reed Henry. Here's a wonderful shop, and I have a picture of it over here that you can take a better look at of Mr. Lewis as a young man. There he is as an elderly man. And who is he sitting next to? Can you see?
Right.
Yes. Actually, this is in 1948. Frank Lloyd Wright came to Louisville. He spoke, this was a luncheon. Mr. Lewis was president of the local chapter of the AIA. And I always thought it was neat, as Mr. Lewis matured, he began, I thought, looking a lot like Frank Lloyd Wright. And one thing that Frank Lloyd Wright did after he left Louisville, he went to Frankfurt, and there is a home there in Frankfurt. I know Steve could show it. It's right there. It's called
The Ziegler.
Yeah, it's called the Ziegler House. The only true piece of architecture he did in Kentucky. There are a few done by Taliesin, but this was done in 1910. He actually met Mr. Ziegler. He was a minister on board a ship. They were headed to Europe. They made an acquaintance. They made an arrangement to do a house. And so it's a nice house. Unfortunately, you really can't do a tour through it, but it's what you call kind of the prairie style, very typical of the homes that he did in Oak Park when he was starting out. I'm going to talk a minute about Mr. Henry. This was a project that Mr. Henry did. His father was a judge, and he was actually on the World Court when they used to meet in Alexandria before The Hague. And so Mr. Henry spent a lot of his younger days in North Africa. So for his thesis, when he was at Yale, he did this project called the British Girls' College in Alexandria. And in later days, Mr. Henry always kind of did the traditional work in our office, but I was really impressed because if you look at it, in 1936, this is a really nice design. It has what you might call the international modern style to it. But because he was an upperclassman, there was a younger underclassman in the school with him, and he had him do the trees and the foliage, and that person was Errol Saarinen. Now, I don't think there's any hush in the crowd, they know who Errol Saarinen was, but he became a very, very famous architect. So he had the underclassmen do the grunt work by embellishing his facades with trees.
Errol Saarinen, just to let you know, did the St. Louis Arch, did the TWA terminal in LaGuardia. He also did Dulles Airport, did numerous signature office buildings throughout the U.S. He even proposed a research center here for Reynolds Aluminum out near Anchorage, which was never built. But Errol Saarinen is one of the legendary architects, just like Frank Lloyd Wright was. So for both of them to be connected to those legendary, iconic architects is pretty big leap.
And way back when I was going to Cranbrook Academy in Bloomfield Hills outside of Detroit, Cranbrook was a school that was started partly by the Saarinens. He had a father, Eliel Saarinen, who came to this country first, and then Errol came, and he did a lot of architecture on that campus as well. Okay, two other principals in the office was Larry Lease. He's up here. And this is Clyde Warner. Unfortunately, Larry passed away. Clyde Warner is still alive, and he is still kicking at 102 years old.
102 about this.
102 years old. Yeah,
He still goes in the office every day.
Yeah, he works in the office of Scott Kramer, and I think they have a little office space for him and a little desk, and he pays his dues there. But this is a nice shot of both Larry and Clyde together. And I worked with both of them for many years on a variety of projects. This is a neat shot of the downtown Louisville. And even though it's dated, because there's some buildings not there like the Humana building, but it's hard to see. But we put numbers on various buildings in the city that we have done. Like this could be the Science Center, could be Avenue Plaza. So rather than try to go through all of these, you can see that Lewis and Henry really made quite a statement on the various buildings that scattered around town. And then they used to give an award, I guess they still do, to an outstanding firm. And Lewis and Henry were the first firm to get that award. And you can see all these lists of different buildings under different categories: housing, recreation, government, medical, offices and banks that we did. In our day, we were a very, very active firm. This was the first project that got Lewis and Henry started. Mr. Henry and Mr. Lewis served their time, or did their time in the war, and they came back and they started a firm, and there was a competition to do a housing project. This, I think, is Beecher Terrace, and they won the project. So to create a firm and to do a project like this is amazing. And you know, it looks maybe a little, I don't know, a little blah, a lot of flat roof buildings, but the way they arranged them into courtyards and had a variety of heights of, two-story and one-story, was really very creative. Unfortunately, I think Beecher Terrace is...
Yeah, they've since demolished it, they built it.
But this was the initial project. If you look real closely, you can see A. Reed Henry. So, I mean, I give him credit. That's one heck of a rendering that he did to get that job. Okay, these are some current projects that they have done. Dosker Manor, which is downtown, and that's gotten some not so good publicity, but they do have a new director of the Housing Authority, which we hope will make that place better. This is Avenue Plaza over here, and this is a building where the Housing Authority has their offices. I was involved with the design of that building. These are two projects right along Grinstead Road for the Baptist Seminary student housing, and this one here is sort of stepped on the hillsides, and even though they're different, I think they really blend in well with the neighborhood and with the campus. This is, we did buildings for Jefferson Community College. This is the Hartford Tower. Unfortunately, I think it may be demolished because they do want to change the campus. This is the project that influenced me when I first came to town in the late 60s. It's the addition to the Free Public Library. You can see the roofs of the original library. It just had a very beautiful, sort of simple design. The interiors were great. And I just felt to drop a building like that in the downtown area was pretty darn impressive. This is a square downtown called Federal Square. In the middle there is a sculpture by Barney Bright. And this project, well, projects, Lewis and Henry did all 4 buildings to front on to this. This is the WHAS Studios, this is the Federal Building, this is the United Mercantile, this is the South Central Bell Building, and I was involved with the design of that. They had great plans for that. That was actually planned to be 14 stories high. Unfortunately, that didn't work out, and so now it's going to become the police headquarters. So it shows you have to make your buildings very adaptable. You never know what's going to happen to them. Other projects that Lewis and Henry has done, this is the planetarium. Actually, there was an original planetarium there, but this replaced it. And really, Lewis and Henry did both of those planetariums. This has a lot of symbolism in that there's a circle here with spots. It's supposed to sort of signify Stonehenge, which of course has astronomical alignments as well. This is a Presbyterian seminary. We did the buildings on that campus that was carved out of Cherokee Park. This is the Caldwell Chapel. This is one of the prettier churches in town. This is the St. Matthew Episcopal Church. Larry Lease was involved with this, and the idea of those sloping roofs were supposed to emulate tents, like somehow how the early Christians worshipped.
Was there anyone here with St. Matthew's Episcopal? Did anyone go to that church? No?
I can remember Larry Lease had his funeral services very appropriately in that church. Okay, here's, you know, Lewis and Henry was in 2 different locations. For many years, we were at the corner of Preston and Broadway in the Metro United Way building, up on the 3rd floor. I spent many hours up there. And there is Larry with Mary Hurd Jackson, who's also an architect. And there's a funny story about how Larry was going around from table to table, critiquing and just giving comments. And he was a smoker back then. And when he finished up making the rounds, he looked back, and on every table there was an ashtray with a lit cigarette in it. This is another view. You can see back in those days we didn't have CAD drafting. It was like, I guess you could call them the parallel bars and the triangles and the protractors and the compasses. We all did things pretty much by hand. And then after we left here, we went down to Main Street, and we were on the corner of 8th and Main in the Opera Building, and that was a much more exciting place to be. These are 2 other outstanding buildings downtown. This is the Justice Center. You can see the very dramatic entrance, and this is a very impressive conference room that was on that floor, and this is the Hall of Justice up here. So you can see we did some pretty major buildings downtown. This was one of the last buildings that I was involved with. It's the Louisville Water Company, and it has a lot of water imagery in it. It has the beautiful curved blue glass on the front facade, and if you're familiar with the 2 towers that are at River Road and Zorn, this is sort of replicates them. This is the water tower, and this is the big stack. And the stairs are in here, and the elevators in this building. And in the middle is this beautiful open atrium. There was a pool that was designed, but people kept falling into it, so they had to put plants around it to keep that from happening. But this was really a nice building, and it showed up well. This is on Main Street. This is the Louisville Science Center. It used to be what was the Carter Dry Goods Building originally, and because we kept the integrity of the street facade, the front facade was maintained, and then we pushed back in, and we created a wonderful foyer in the front of it. And then if you've been inside, you know it has this great atrium, and there's that pendulum ball swinging back and forth. And it's expanded to the west, and there's an IMAX theater now. And this actually was a project that won the National AIA Honor Award. And this is the campus of U of L. And again, here's a list of all the different buildings that we did. We did lots of dormitories and academic buildings. One building that I was involved with was the Ekstrom Library. They've since put an addition on the back, which I'm not that excited about. But when we did the original building, there was this huge tulip poplar that we had to maintain. So when during construction, we had to be very careful to keep the tulip poplar. And if you remember, there was the theater, Louisville Theater was here, the Playhouse. And so they actually dismantled that and they stored it in a warehouse, and then they reconstructed it over here on just a block away. And I know the president always said that when they had to dismantle it, make sure that they wrapped up all the acoustics and put it in bags so they could save them. Who is this guy?
I took that photograph. And he had no idea that I took it some, 40 some odd years ago.
Yeah, let's see, 70 now, let's see, 24 and 20, that's 45 years ago. Oh my God.
We may have been working on the plans for the forum at that time.
Who knows, yeah. This is the little newsletter that we used to do, and we certainly mentioned the Brookside when we were doing this. Yeah, this was 1983. You can see we got a lot of mileage out of this sketch. And you know, it still looks like that today now with all these trees going up around them. All your villas. I got to remember to say villas and not cottages. Okay, this was a special event. This was the dedication. And you know, I have a few of these things. I don't know if you have any of these in your archives, but I'd be willing to give you some of these just for reference so you can have them. But this was a special time, and you can see the date was December 2nd, 1984. So you can see, going between groundbreaking and the dedication, this was being built, and it took about 18 months to do it. So you do have a special kind of period of time to recognize 40 years later.
I wish we could build that fast nowadays.
Yeah, well, that's why those bonds really speeded things up. They didn't have to wait for the money to come. And then this is another layout showing the grounds. As I say, I love to drive around here and seeing what you've done to the cottages, to our villas, to the garages. You've made them into garages with carports. And even here you put screens and closed in some of the balconies. And I do have one question. You do have, I guess, 2 wings back here. Are they both being utilized for health care?
Not at this time.
No?
We have a AL, Ambassador Suites, for
Which
like
is-
personal care.
Oh, for personal care?
Assisted
Okay.
living, yeah.
Okay, all right. I was just curious because I forgot how we attended those. Maybe one was personal and one was intermediate care.
It's been about, what, 3 years? 3 years.
That
They've
you
closed
changed
down
that?
that healthcare, yeah.
Okay, yeah. Now we're going to see if we're back here, and this is one big change that you did, and you put this new sort of entrance porte-cochere on the front of it, kind of in a neo-Tudor design, and high enough so buses can go under, and that was certainly a very important addition as you approach the entrance of this building. And this is the lobby as you come into. I do have to admit that when I was designing this space, I had planned, and it was actually made, to have a dropped sort of sitting area right here where you'd step down into like a conversation pit. But then people realized, well, people could trip and fall over that. So when you're standing in this lobby area close to the reception desk, remember there was a conversation pit that had to be leveled over the top.
That was the hidden space that we referred to.
Yeah, that's it.
That was the secret space.
We should have put
You
a...
could actually put a trap door there.
Yeah, we could have, yeah. We should have put a time capsule in there.
Yeah, time capsule, that'd be great. Oh, geez.
But of course you have
Missed
your,
opportunity.
you got your skylight over the top here. And we'll take a little tour. These, I think, are your exit drawings, so you know how to go when the fire comes. And, this is, I guess you call this the common space. You've got your dining room, you've got somewhere up here your cafe, you've got a beauty shop, you've got rooms like this, you've got a library. This is kind of the hub of activity here. And it's really, it's just fun to walk around and see all these activities before you go off to your residential wings. You've got your pool, But this is where I guess I have a chance to eat with you today in your dining room. And it's really a really elegant space. Is the food good here? This is you call these the ambassador suites. You know, it's important when you design these. This is called the nurse's station or nurse's desk. You have to have your rooms not exceed a certain distance from the nurse's desk. You do have a dining room back here, I guess, for those who can't come to the main dining room. And so it's a very compact little design. And this is, I'm guessing that this is Joyce Morrison's apartment. Good thing she made things in tiny, but this shows you what a one-bedroom apartment is. In fact, I do have plans of all of the cottages and all the apartments. And this is our apartments. And you know, they're kind of strung along. There's 4 buildings. And what's kind of interesting are these various lobbies that we have between them. They're all different shapes to accommodate the different angles. But it's a nice mix of, let's see, 1 and 2 bedrooms. This is another view that tells you how to get out of there. But you know, each one has stairs and has an elevator. This is a pool. And I can remember when we first had the pool, there was kind of an inventor who had what was called a hydraulic chair. And it was positioned on the edge of the pool. And you sat on it, and I guess through the hydraulics of the water, the chair turned and put you into the water. But I see that's gone, so maybe it didn't work out quite so well. This is one of the spaces between the apartments. It looks very accommodating. This is the nurse's desk, or station. And these are one of the 2 passageways. You know, by doing the 2 passageways, you created this really nice courtyard in between. And I don't know if you realize it, the apartments are on a different level as the commons area. So as you go through here, there is a level change. There are very subtle ramps as you go from one end to another. And so it allows you to get from one place to another without getting wet. And one of the things we had to do is make sure that there was double doors on both sides, because you had to get landscaping equipment into the courtyards to cut the grass and do all that maintenance stuff. And this shows how beautiful the landscaping has become. I guess, Steve, this was a picture you took when we were here a couple months ago. So it really is really kind of greened out so beautifully. You can see one of the passageways to the doors over there. Another view of the courtyard. Do you all use your courtyards very much?
Oh, yes.
Do you get out?
Yes.
And this is a view looking back toward the apartments. And this is a great view, is how it looks today. And Steve, I think you were able, through, I guess, aerial photographs that map our whole world, take a shot of what it looks like today. And so if you remember the earlier picture of the aerial shot, you could just see the buildings and hardly any buildings, and you can see how verdant everything is. There's the babbling creek going through the road. You know, one nice thing about this is you have protection from Shelbyville Road. You have this wonderful, nice meandering drive before you really get into where the villas are and the commons are. So it really is, you're really lucky to be on such a fine piece of land here. And I think with that, that brings our little talk.
We have some questions, and then we'll do the narrates at the end.
Okay, all right. Who has any questions that we'll try to answer?
That building on the lower left corner by the entry,
Yeah, let's go back.
that's not there anymore, is it?
This one right here.
That one right there?
Yeah, I think it is, but I think looking at, there's some bright colors on it. It's some other function, I'm sure. Yeah, but I remember driving here, and yeah, that's still there. And there's been some more building going on back here, right up against these apartments.
With the Latin school, yeah.
Yeah, is that the Latin school?
It's the Latin school.
Okay, and
right
then these
beside us.
cottages are still here too. Go ahead.
This is in the 80s. Do you remember what was there in the 70s?
What, on the property prior?
Okay, I'd love to know.
2 buildings.
2 buildings, okay.
Yes, a nursing home and a rehab center.
Uh-huh, wow.
And I visited my assistant teacher who was in the rehab center.
Mm-hmm, wow.
2 buildings.
Perfect, yeah.
Back there.
Were there any contractors or building-related folks here that worked with Lewis and Henry back in the day? You don't remember that? No one
No.
connected to Lewis and Henry?
I think when we did this project, we had to put a team together, and so there was a firm that did the landscaping, and I think it was probably Miller, Wiry, and Lee, and there was a firm that did the mechanical electrical engineering, and I think that was E.R. Ronalds, and then there was structural engineers, I think that was Sandler and Campbell. So we all became a team, a design team together.
Was it called the Forum back then?
That's a great question. Was it officially called just Brookside or was it Forum? It was called Brookside.
Yeah, Brookside.
It was called
Brookside Senior
Brookside.
Living.
Yeah, in fact,
Brookside.
That's a great question.
I have the fish in my pocket
Oh,
here,
wow. Wow.
because, I hope I got it. Okay, I have the keys to the kingdom. It says Brookside. This key will get you in any door on this campus. This is what they gave out when they had the dedication.
Oh my
So,
gosh.
and I will donate it to
To the archives.
The archive. That's
That's
adorable.
great.
Yeah. Go ahead.
When this was first developed, were these apartments for sale? The villas, did people come and buy them as, did they come and buy these as a, like they do in Florida? They have a 6 months here and 6 months in Florida, were they owned by the person?
That's a tough question. I think so. I think you did purchase them. And I think, wasn't it that when you had to give it up for various reasons, you got money back for the value that it was?
Sarah can speak to that. Hold on.
Yeah.
It did start out as a life care community where you could put a lump sum down and your monthly rent was lower and it paid for your care throughout your lifetime. So it started out that way. You didn't really, you didn't own the unit, but it was a life care community.
Okay.
That's cool.
And that's an unusual concept back then, too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very much so.
Why do the villas have 1 or 2 12-inch walls here and there?
12-inch walls?
Walls.
They'd be firewalls.
Oh, firewalls?
Yeah, they'd be firewalls.
Yeah, it might be, yeah. You have to have, you have so much area, and you have to divide things up with firewalls. I think they have to be, either 2 or 4 hour rated, so the fire doesn't jump from one side to another.
Yeah.
That's a great question.
Mhm.
When did Brookside Senior Living become the Forum? How did the name change?
So
That's,
that happened in, I want to say 85 or 86, and the Forum Group out of Indianapolis purchased the property. So it became the Forum at Brookside.
Good point.
What is the stream that goes through here? The brook?
I think with the brook.
well, they call it Babbling Brook. You know, I assume,
That's a good question.
yeah, I think it's one of the employees for it.
It's bigger grass.
Is it bear grass that comes off?
Bear grass.
Yeah. Yeah, there are several bear grass creeks that do come together. And I live in Cherokee Park, and we have one that
Let
goes through the
Carol
park.
talk about the Bear Grass Creek.
I just know what I see on the sign on the bridge coming into the Forum. It says that it's the middle branch of Beargrass Creek.
Okay.
Wonderful.
Yeah, there's I guess an upper fork, middle fork, and, you know, they all do converge.
And it drains all the way to the Ohio River.
Go ahead, Carlton.
There is a book called Middletown's Days and Deeds, and that was originally the way they came up to Middletown. When Louisville was founded, it was a swamp. Middletown was huge. It had hotels and shops and so forth, and they brought everything up from the Ohio River up to Middletown. If you can get a hold of that book, it's very, very interesting.
What was the name of it?
Middletown's Days and Deeds.
Oh.
Okay.
Wow.
Okay, Keith wants to go over Veritas Society, if that would be okay.